All right, so first and foremost, there's a Google event tomorrow. You all should have gotten an email through for it. That I think you can find the details in the email. So Google on campus, and they can answer questions about like the hiring process and that kind of things. And I think they have like kind of a coding event here tomorrow. So be sure to check that out. You should have been sent multiple messages in Canvas by this point. Not by me, but I've been getting them, and hopefully you've been getting them too. All right. The second thing is how are people doing on the various things? Because I don't know what the speed of the course should be at this point, because it's been 1 week, and I think people are still joining up that have not been in this class. People are showing up and they haven't been in the class yet. So first and foremost, where are people in watching the lecture videos? Okay.
I'm confused on what lecture videos you're supposed to watch.
So there's two playlists, right? The first one is the flipped one, and that's the actual content for the course that you need for learning. The second lecture video is stuff is stuff like this, which you don't really need to watch unless you miss class, right? The second lecture video, the second playlist is just in-class stuff, and you'll notice that basically all the sections, that's just mixed in together because that just seemed the easiest way to keep them separate. Now, ideally by now, I wanted you to have be up to the video on Repr classes, right? The video on Repr classes.
That's what you wanted us to watch up to?
Yeah, that's what I wanted you to watch up to. And then by your lab section, I want you guys to be caught up on the array lists. Okay? Mainly because the exercise that we're going to start today is on array lists. Or ideally we're going to start today is on array lists. Now that being said, like a lot of the videos were about how to there's about 45 to 50 minutes on how you build an array list. You don't need to know that for the exercises, but they're useful to understand how array lists work, and you got to know that for the next section, which is when we talk about big O notation and algorithmic efficiency. Because if you don't know, yes.
I was just looking to say, this is java.util.list.
Yeah.
And then you went along and you built your own class for list.
Yes.
Was that just kind of to give us an idea of what's in java.util?
Yes. It give you an idea of what was in java.util.ArrayList. Okay. That's to give you an idea of how it worked. And that way, and I didn't implement ArrayList, I didn't implement list because then I'd have 15 auxiliary functions I'd have to do that weren't really pertinent, turning, there's one function that converts your list into an array, right? And we could do that, but it's not particularly useful, right? So that's so the entire point is to understand the internals of how it works, to understand if you had to build it because the language you were working in didn't provide it, like C, where it doesn't provide it necessarily out of the box, but then how do you do that kind of thing? Then, yes?
Can you post the PowerPoint slides?
Are they not online?
Or if they're online, where do we find them?
Okay, so they should be, so let's go ahead and I'm going to do my best to try and pull them up right now because that is an excellent question. They should be online. And if they are not, I'm not sure why not, but I apologize that is not working out. So yeah, let's go to, so it should be in Canvas, right? Here. So let me, actually, so yeah, Canvas, sorry if it's for the small text, I can always change that, but it should be under Files, which I guess is grayed out for some reason, I don't know why. Files is not published. Why is it not published? Because I have an entire folder called Slides. Upload, yeah, I've got it, but I've got this folder here, and it's got, we've got all these slides files in here, so settings.
We don't even have the files tab.
Yeah, I noticed that. Okay, so sections, navigation. Oh, interesting. It wasn't in there. Thank you. So now you should have it once I hit the save button. And Magic, I guess? Awesome. All right, so there's all your slides. So you'll be able to find your stuff here. I do have a private folder in there that you guys can't get access to, but this is where like all the stuff, like all the syllabus ends up here, all the PDFs I upload end up here, all the stuff that I link you to. But yeah, so yeah, you guys should now have access to the files. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Did not and thank you for bringing that to my attention. Okay, and these are the most recent set of slides, so this corresponds with our edition. And then when I go through the slides, there are some minor typographical errors. That's merely because I'm not using Microsoft's PowerPoint, right? I'm using LibreOffice, so there's some mess sometimes. All right. So hopefully that's solved. So I wanted you guys to have gone through generics and wrapper classes at this point. So before I jump back to that, okay, how are people doing on the rabbit problem? Okay, not really. Okay, so some people are having trouble because I've seen some people and they're like, whoa, that turned out to be easy, and some people are like, gosh, this is ridiculously hard. All right, so how many people would say, by show of hands, you're having difficulty getting to with that? Okay. All right. How many of you are having difficulty getting like a survival rate greater than 70%? Okay. All right. So a couple of hands. All right. So my suggestion for this strategy is actually you can get an 80% pretty easily by following a very simple strategy, and then you have to modify the strategy. Okay. But the strategy to get an 80% survival rate just is pretty simple. The default action, by the way, is to stay still. But otherwise, what you do is you look in every direction. If you see the fox, okay, then you want to move out of its line of sight. Now there's multiple moves you can take that will likely put you out of its line of sight, right? Moving towards it, bad idea. Moving away from it won't get you out of its line of sight, but it will probably let you move away from it and try to get out of its line of sight another time, right? And then there's 6 other directions, some of which allow you to go out of line of sight more likely than others, right? Right, the diagonals and moving perpendicular to the fox, right? So simply figuring out a good order for those directions will actually, doing a good ordering for those directions will get you up to about an 80% survival rate. Just simply doing a for loop and then saying, oh, we can move in these directions. Then trying to move in like, I'll try going in these pairs of directions first. Oh, can't do that, I'll try these pair of directions. Oh, can't do that, try and go in these pairs of directions. You get what I'm saying? So that will actually get you into some experiment. So you just have to experiment, but that will get you up to a 70-80% survival rate. And so it's a fairly straightforward strategy. So, but do people feel like they need more time on that one? Okay, so more time on that, but not too many people. So speak to me afterwards, and speak to me after all this is done, and then I'll see, because I also have to pull the class tomorrow. And I've also uploaded some other, a new homework assignment due for next week, and I'm still trying to figure out when the appropriate time for a due date is for these guys. But I'm giving like a week's worth on this. Now this most latest assignment, this one is essentially the same kind of problems you probably had to do for homeworks or for exercises. They're fairly tedious ones, but they give you a good technical understanding of how to write generic methods. Now, that being said, do people have questions about generics? Because I do have a quiz ready to go for you guys. Yeah, kind of nowish. So I want to know, like, what questions do you have about generics? Do you want me to go over, like, the kind of concept you have of generics? Like, are there any specific questions you guys have? Yes. Okay. So can anybody tell me like what the use of a generic is? Why I even wanted to introduce the concept? Yes. Well, what can I do with a generic then? I can. Sorry. It's not. It's a fairly. I'm not looking for anything deep and technical. Yes.
You can make it non-generic and specify whatever.
Yeah, you can specify a type and say it's a weird term to use generic to say generic, right? Even though you're not right. It just says that basically you can specify what goes into the class, right? A list of string or a list of integers or a list of something else, right? So you can restrict access to this class. Now, why would I want to do that? Why would I want? Yes.
Prevent like any other like data types getting causing a code crash.
Yeah. Specifically, it's not just data getting in. It's specifically preventing you from shooting yourself in the foot, right? It's when we say data, we like to say data might accidentally get it in there, but we got to blame ourselves. It's us letting data through. Yes.
So when you do like a E-type generic class?
Yes.
So I have some problem like understanding. So you can put anything into like E-type, right?
Yes. Right now you can. We'll learn about putting in restrictions later on, like saying that only things that are comparable, only things you can compare to one another can be put in this. But that's a bit, but for right now, if you just simply say like put in an E when you're writing your class, like I did for the array list, right? So the box example and the array list example are the two that I wrote. Then those are, then those are what gets put in. So like if I type, let me just pull up a basic text editor again because that's all I need to do right now. Okay, let's go ahead and, so if I made like public class my thing, right, and this is generic over here, that's all all I really need to know to do to declare that this object has generics in it. And then I would put, I could put E some data there, right? Now the kicker is now if I were to go into a different class and like this public, let's call it class maker public class maker, public static void main string args, right? What I could do is that I can create I can say my thing, and I don't ever really put E in this file. What I do is like say I put string, okay, over here. Right, I'm just typing a bit slow because I've decided to put this in the text editor. Right, what essentially goes on is that this string replaces all instances of E in this instance of the file. So basically that essentially this now accepts strings and doesn't accept anything else. So essentially that's how you write it for a class. Now the methods that we're going to write today, those have to do, we're going to go over, yes.
Do those have to be in like the same package?
Yeah, I mean, in order for them to call in each other, but yeah. I mean, I'm not in the same package as array list, but I'm able to use it just fine, right? Anyway, so generics allow us to restrict things. Now, there was one other thing I mentioned, which were wrapper classes. Okay, now what was special about wrapper classes? Yes?
They classes for primitive type.
Yeah, they're classes for primitive types. Like, so what was one example of a wrapper class? Integer, right? Integer for the, you can take any integer and store it in, take any int and store it in an integer, right? And take any integer and then store it in an int. And this is a process called auto-boxing or auto-unboxing, right? You can put it in a class and you can take it outside of a class. Or you can take it and you can take the primitive out and put it back into a primitive. There's one for basically every primitive. They're fairly easy to remember, right? Integer for ints, doubles, capital D doubles for doubles, right? Then you've got, this one you have characters for cars, right? You have character instead of char. You have, and then you have capital B Boolean for Booleans, right? So not too hard to remember. And they also have a bunch of nice static variables in there as well.
And this was connected to generics
Because-
with the capital can be in the.
Yeah, because you cannot, because,
You can put those in place D, but not the other.
right,
Okay.
because the generic needs to be a class type. It needs to be some kind of class. And primitives are not classes. So so it becomes a string of integers rather than ints. It's just a weird rule you have to follow. It's an unfortunate rule you have to follow, but it is the way. It's just the way it works. All right. So with that being said, I think I've gone over actually a lot of the stuff that's in the quiz. So the quiz is the generic quiz, right? There's two quizzes. There's two now quizzes that are pending for you guys to take. So if you go on Canvas, you should find a generic quiz so that you can get that on your laptop or on your phone, okay? And the password for that is 222222. What?
Spelled out or the
The numerals. The numerals 2. 6 2s. That is correct.